Hello, welcome to my video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create a little pumpkin wind spinner. There you go. So a little wind spinner, pumpkin themed, with a little miniature pumpkin decoration to hang underneath. In my prototype video, my sneak peek video, I did show you this one with the leaves on here, but on this tutorial I'm not actually going to show you how to make leaves because I think having the leaves on makes it look a little bit more like an orange as opposed to a pumpkin, which this one looks much more like a pumpkin, if you can see, with just the stalk. So we're just going to be making the stalk today. As always, with my wind spinners, I'm going to be using a 3mm crochet hook, the yarn of your choice, of course. You're also going to need some fibre fill or some strands, offcuts of yarn, or whatever it is that you usually stuff things with. You're going to need some of that to pop into there. The fibre fill would be better because it'll be a quicker drying in the rain. And yeah, so then your choice of your orange, and then whatever stalk colour you want to do. You could do a green stalk rather than the sort of natural brown colour that I've done. Other than that, I think that's everything that we need to go through. And just to quickly note that I will be using US terms with this tutorial, okay? So to begin, I'm showing you the end of round one here because most of you know how to crochet, so you don't need me to keep repeating this step. To begin, you're going to start with a slip knot. If you aren't familiar with a slip knot, there is a nice slow demo video on my YouTube channel. There's a playlist called Crochet Basics, and on there it's a nice slow walkthrough of that and how to create a magic ring. So to begin, for the purposes of the video, I've just done a chain of 30, but I would suggest a minimum of 50 for your finished product. So I've created a slip knot, I've chained 30, and then I've chained an extra 1 as my turning chain, and then I've inserted a single crochet into each chain along, okay? And that's in every single crochet, so we will end up with 30 crochets, single crochets. Then once you get to the end of round 1, we are going to be changing colour. So for anyone that's not familiar with this, so we are in our last but one stitch there. Then what we need to do to change colour with a single crochet is insert your hook into the final chain, yarn over with your current colour, so yarn over with the green, so you've got 2 loops of the green on your hook, so you've kind of got halfway through the single crochet without finishing off. Then you take your second colour, yarn it over your hook, and then pull that through both loops of the green. You take the working end of your orange, yarn over again, and pull through that loop. Okay, so that's your new colour attached now to the first one. And then to begin round 2, we're going to make a chain of 3. 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to turn our work, so we're facing the opposite way around. Then in this first stitch here, the one that we've got our chain of 3 coming out of, we're going to insert a double crochet. Remember, this is in US terms. If you're working in UK terms, this would be a treble, okay? So we're going to insert our double crochet into that very first stitch. Then into the next stitch, we're going to insert 2 double crochets, or a double crochet increase if you prefer that terminology, and we're going to continue doing the exact same for the entire round all the way down to the end. So round 2 is created with a chain of 3, then we turn our work, we double crochet into that same space, then we're going to insert 2 double crochets into each stitch all the way around, and this is what creates your curl. Okay, so we will come to the end of round 2, and I will pause here and I'll meet you back in a moment when we've reached that point. So we've reached the end of round 2, and as you can see, your work is starting to curl now. Don't be too concerned if it's not obviously at the moment it won't be a perfect spiral because we're working with the yarn, so don't worry about that. I will show you later on in the video how to shape your spinner at the end. Okay, so we have now come to the end of the second round. We've popped our 2 double crochets into each single crochet along. Now for the third round, we are going to make another chain of 3, same as we did for the second, turn our work again. Then we are going to work another 2 double crochets back into this same space that your chain 3 has come from. So 1 like last time, but we're also going to add another into that same stitch. Then into next stitch, we're going to be working 3 double crochets. Okay, so 1, 2, and 3. And this just makes your wind spinner turn and twist to the you know, the signature spiral shape rather than sort of a loose curl, if you like. And that same again, we're going to be doing that all the way along into each of the double crochets from round 2. So remember, it's a chain of 3, turn your work back on itself, then we're going to insert another 2 double crochets back into that same space, then 3 double crochets into each stitch along. So into the top of each double crochet from round 2, we're going to be working 3 double crochets. Okay, same again, work your way around, and I'll meet you back at the end of this one. So I've completed round 3, and I've also gone on to finish the 4th round. I've not shown you this step because it's super easy. So at the end of the round 3, we're going to chain 1, turn our work again, and then we're just going to slip stitch into the top of every double crochet. Okay, so reach the end of round 3, chain 1, and then slip stitch into the top of each double crochet all the way around until you get to the end. And that just gives your wind spinner a nice smooth finish, but it also actually stiffens it quite a lot as well. You'll see that it goes from being really flimsy to quite a stiff spiral. Okay, so that's where we've got to the end of that one there. So pause the video a second while you finish that round off, and then I'm going to show you how to shape your spiral. So to shape your spiral or your spinner, you take your top of your spinner. Okay, so we finished off our final round, our round of slip stitches, and that's the bottom of our spinner. Okay, so the opposite end is going to be our top. Then what we do is we take our spinner and we start to work with it naturally what it wants to do. It wants to turn, so we're going to turn it so as if we're turning it and making it into a round coaster. And then we do that with the rest of the spirals as well, so we're kind of stacking them on top of each other like that. So just follow the shape all the way around, keep turning it. It doesn't matter if you go left or right, just follow the shape around and untwist as you go. And there you go, that's super easy. And then you'll end up with what looks like a sort of stack of circles, and that's exactly what you want. Okay, because now you will see as I pull up, I'll pull sideways so that you can actually see it's more, you know, you've got your spiral there now instead of the mess that we just had. Okay, so that's how to shape your spinner. Next we are going to move on to making our pumpkin, and then after that we'll make the stalks for each pumpkin, and then I'll show you how to assemble everything. Okay, now we're going to begin making our little stuffed pumpkin that's going to be hanging down the bottom, the decoration. To do that, we're going to create a slip knot, and we are going to make a chain of 12. Okay, so chain 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and that's your 12. Then we are going to be inserting half double crochet into each chain, starting from the 3rd chain from the hook. So that's our 1st chain from the hook there, that's our 2nd, and this 3rd V is our 3rd chain. Okay, so insert our hook into that 3rd V, yarn over and pull through all 3, and that's our first half double crochet. We're going to half double crochet in each chain along, so that's 2, so we will end up with 10. 3, 4, 5, chain and into our very first chain that we created for our 10 half double crochets. Then we are going to make a chain of 2, so chain 2, and then turn our work. Now this is the slightly different bit. We are now going to be working a half double crochet into the 3rd loop of every stitch. Now don't panic if you've just heard me say 3rd loop of every stitch and you don't know what I'm talking about. So the 3rd loop of each stitch is only applicable to the half double crochet stitch. So in crochet we've got our front loop here and we've got our back loop there. So our 2 V's, so that's the front loop, this is the back loop. Now if you turn your work vertically with a half double crochet, the 3rd loop is this little diagonal loop here. You see what I mean? Where it goes from left to right. So we've got our top V of our stitch that we usually work in under, our front loop, our back loop. This is our 3rd loop, the diagonal. Okay, so we're working a half double crochet into each diagonal. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to start right here, right at the edge, insert our hook into this diagonal stitch, and we're going to work from the bottom upwards. So we're still going from right to left, yarn over and finish your half double crochet. Again, back into the diagonal from the bottom up, from right to left, and that's our half double crochet. So we're going to keep doing that all the way along. So we've done 2 and into our 3rd, bottom up, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7, 8, 9, and our final one, 10. Sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to see on the last one, so if I just show you a little bit closer up. So you've got your top V there, and then on the back you've got the front loop of the stitch slightly lapping over. So you're just imagine where your diagonal would be if this was completely upright. If you just make sure that your V's are right up at the top, it will bring this one down, so you will see your diagonal 3rd loop there. Okay, so insert that one into the 10th and finish off with your half double crochet. Okay, now we're going to chain another 2, turn our work back around, and you will see the reason that we worked into that 3rd loop there is it's created a really nice little ribbing effect on the back there. Okay, so this is why we're working into the 3rd loops, and this is why we're using the half double crochet, because you don't get it with any other stitch. And then this is what's going to make our ribbed texture for our pumpkin, as you can see. And it's basically double-sided as well. There's not too much of a difference between the front and the back. So it's a really nice little stitch to work with, and it's really stretchy, and it's just lovely. So what we're going to do to finish our pumpkin is we're going to repeat the half double crochets into the 3rd loops of your stitch. So 10 across each row, and then at the end of the row, chain 2, turn your work and work your 10 half double crochets into the back of your 3rd loops again. Now we're going to do this until we've got 14 rounds in total. Okay, so we need to make sure we've got 14 rounds at the end. And if you're ever unsure about how many rounds that you've done with this stitch, if you take a look at a block, so between the 2 braids, this is 2 rounds. Okay, so we've got half of one there, so that's 1 round. Then we've got 2, so that's 3. Then we've got another 2, 5, another 2, 7, another 2, 9, another 2, 11, another 2, 13, and then the one at the top there, so that's our 14th row. Okay, so that's on one way round, and then on the other side, if you wanted to make it even easier, you can see that the ribbing is evenly spaced with 2 rows apart. So you've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and then your 14. Okay, so carry on and finish off your 14 rounds, and at the end finish off, pull up a loop, and make sure you leave a nice long tail, because we're going to be using this to sew your pumpkin together in a moment. Now to begin with making our pumpkin shaping. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew one end closed first, and then we're going to work down and work along the side, and then we're going to work down and finish off in a moment. So I'm not the greatest sewer in the world, but this is how I do them personally. So I take my needle, and if you just work just below the first level of stitches, because obviously we're working down the side of our stitches here, so you sort of got to just guess. And what I'm doing is I'm going in from one side, so go in from the front, back through the back, through the front, back through the back. Okay, so we're kind of whip stitching all the way along. Do a few stitches, pull your yarn tail through, and then continue to do that all the way along. So we're sort of concertinaing. So back in through the front to the back. Doesn't have to be perfect, because at the moment what we're doing is we're stitching one end closed, and then we're going to be turning this piece inside out. So this is going to be the inside anyway. Concertina in and out every few stitches. Pull your tail through once you've done sort of another third. And again, work in and out under the V's. In and out. Just weaving basically. Just make sure you catch enough of the yarn above it so that it isn't going to slip out. Okay, so we've got to the end. So feed your yarn, the rest of your yarn through. So now your yarn is threaded through the top there of those, the top of those stitches. So then what you need to do is, if you, let me finish pulling through the rest of my yarn. If you actually pull, hold your stitches, and you actually pull your working tail, you will see that it actually pulls your stitch swatch closed. Okay, and you can sort of see that once you go down the sides there, it is going to make a little round pumpkin shape. It almost looks like a miniature hat. So continue staying on this side at the moment, because we're now going to whip stitch down the side seam of our pumpkin. So take the yarn that you're already working with and your needle, and simply just go in and under your top loops there. So I'm just doing a basic stitch. As I said, I'm really not a great sewer. My knowledge is very limited, but this, as long as your stitches are nice and secure and tight, and they're catching on plenty of your yarn, you'll be absolutely fine. Okay, so in again. Front to back or back to front, whichever way you prefer, it really doesn't matter. All the way along, down to the bottom. Make sure you do put plenty of stitches in at the side, because obviously this is where a lot of the strain is going to be coming from once you stuff your pumpkin, and you don't want it to open up and see all your stuffing from inside. Right, so I've taken it and I've managed to come down to the bottom now. I'm actually going to pop in another stitch there just to make it extra secure on that corner. Then what we're going to do is, you should have something that looks like this. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to flip it round and turn it inside out. Alright, so now it's inside out, and it is sort of basically a miniature beanie hat that we've got there. Okay, so it's all pulled in at the top. Then we're going to turn it upside down, and we're going to run our stitch all the way along again, like so run our thread along the top like we did on the bottom. So weave it in and out, just concertina, every few stitches pull your yarn through just to save it getting too tangled. So every couple of stitches or so, pull your yarn up through. Keep it open if you can. In and out. Pull your tail up. And then a couple more times till you reach your starting point. Okay. I think that's where we were. Right, so you've weaved your yarn all the way along the circumference of your pumpkin. Just pop your little tail in there and then add some stuffing, whatever it is that you're going to use, to the desired stiffness. You don't want to go too crazy because you don't want to split all your stitches apart, but at the same time you need it to have a nice full effect. So what you might want to do is fill it to sort of 3/4 and pull your tail slightly to close the gap to see sort of, and then you can gauge how stiff and how stuffed it actually is. I'm actually just going to pop a little bit more in because it's deceptive at how much you actually need of stuffing, and then I think that'll do. And then what you do is you pull your yarn tail really tightly all the way close to close off your little pumpkin. Okay, so you should have something that looks like this. All right, with your little, where we created our little ribbing, this there sort of creates the illusion of the pumpkins. So to finish this one off, to make it look a little bit more pumpkin-y, what I do is I've sort of moved over a little bit, so not gone straight back in there, move over a little bit, take your needle and thread it directly down to the bottom or the center of the bottom of your pumpkin. Pull your yarn through and pull it nice and tight, and you see it sort of pulls the middle in there. Sorry, excuse me, the camera's just about to fall over. And it helps create that sort of nice little pumpkin divot in the middle. Again, on the back, leave a bit of a space so you're creating nice sort of long stitches. And back through the top. Again, make sure you pull tight. And do this a couple of times just to secure that shaping in the middle. I'll come back up once more. Decide which side you want, which end you want to be your top and which end you want to be your bottom. That's a nice neat end, so I'm going to keep that as the top, whereas the bottoms I've sort of, my sewing skills aren't the greatest, they've let me down a bit there. But so that's going to be my top. So if you're keeping your top, you want your tail, your orange tail, to be finishing off out through the bottom of your pumpkin, okay? So pull that one out through the bottom. And then remove your needle. Then what you want to do is take your green yarn, and then what we're going to be doing is we are going to be taking our green yarn and we're going to be tying the green to the orange in a knot, and a couple of times over the green to make a nice big knot to secure it, and then we're going to be feeding it back up through. I'm just going to go and grab my yarn and I'll be back in a moment. So I've taken my green yarn, I've threaded a needle on because we're going to need that one in a moment for sewing back through the pumpkin, and what I've done is I've taken the orange tail and the green and I've tied a knot and secured them together. Then what we're going to do is tie a few more knots of the green just to make sure that it's nice and bulky and it's not much chance, there's no chance of it pulling through from the bottom. because this is going to become our hanging cord for our little stuffed pumpkin to the rest of the spinner. Okay, so we've got a nice big chunk there. So then thread your needle back up through the middle, because we're going to go out through the top and try and come out as centrally as possible, because this is going to be our hanging cord now. Okay, right, so we've got that there. We can tidy up our tails afterwards, because all they're going to need doing now, because they're already tied together, you might want to tie another 2 knots in there and then just trim your tails really short, because you've got the divot of the pumpkin. They will disappear up in there anyway and be hidden away from sight. So we've now got our hanging cord for our little pumpkin. I'm going to leave that there for now, because we're going to make a start on the stalks a moment. So take your stalk colour, whichever colour you've chosen. Now I'm going to begin by making the larger stalk. I've already got the little one made, because they're both made in the same way, and I'm just going to walk you through the larger one, and then you can work on the small one whenever you like. So move that one out of the way a minute. So to make our stalks, what we're going to do for our large one is we're going to create a slip knot, and we are going to make a chain of 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then we are going to single crochet in each chain along, starting from the second chain from our hook. So we will have 11 in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10 and 11. So we've got our foundation chain of 12. We've got one chain that acted as our turning chain, and then we've got 11 single crochets along that foundation row there. Now we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and then we're going to work a single crochet back into that same stitch, and then we're going to work a second row of single crochets. Okay, all the way along. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If I did the right stitch. 9, 10, and our last one there for 11. Okay, so the large stalk for the top of our spinner, we have made a 2 rows of 11 single crochets. For this small one, for our mini stuffed pumpkin, what we do is we make it exactly the same way, but we only do 1 row of single crochets, and we make a chain of 10 instead of 12. So for the large stalk, we make a chain of 12 and we complete 2 rows of single crochet. So we've got 11 in each row. For the small stalk, we create a chain of 10 and we just make 1 row of single crochets all the way along. So we've got 9. Then to form the shape of your stalk, all we're going to do is fold your rectangle in half lengthways. So it's like this, just fold it in half, and then we're just going to slip stitch through the top to secure. You don't have to be too perfect with this, but obviously the neater you are the better. So we're just going to start in through both sides and slip stitch. Again on the opposite side into the other row, slip stitch again, and then if you like, I'd probably do a 3rd slip stitch just to be extra secure. Then once you've finished that slip stitch there, I've just done it really tightly, spare me a second. Pull up a nice long tail, because you're going to need this one for sewing in to your stuffed pumpkin and to your main spinner. Okay, So that's that there, and pull up your loop to finish off. Don't worry about your original working tails, because what we're going to do now is, before we trim that one off, is we're just going to quickly tie a knot between the two tails a couple of times to secure, and then we can trim that shorter end nice and low down to get that one out of the way. So then we're just left with our stalk and the tail there to work in for our sewing to attach to the main body of our spinner. Okay, so we'll come back and have a look at the placement of where that's going to be going onto the spinner there, and then I will finish with the assembly cords, and that will be everything finished. Now we're going to attach our stalk to our main wind spinner. So I've threaded my needle to the end of my yarn tail. So what we want to do is, with my original one, as you can see at the end, I've threaded the hanging loop right through the middle of the stalk there. So you want to position that in the same sort of area on the top of your spinner. So imagine that your hanging cord is coming through the end of this green here, sort of this corner, and it's going straight up. Okay, so we want that stalk to sit kind of in line with the stitching, but sort of above the green. Okay, so we're covering the green with the stalk. So I'm just going to insert my hook in, go in under a stitch just to pull that one close, and check your positioning. You can obviously pin in place or clip in place if you prefer, and then I'm literally just going to thread my needle and yarn through the stalk and continue feeding in under the green, back out, and then back in through the stalk there. Okay, so just to make sure it's nice and secure and tightly stitched, I'm just going to quickly temporarily secure this just so that you can see the threading of the hanging cord a moment. And then once you've finished stitching through the green, I'd probably go once more back through the stalk, feed the tail back down so it's on the underside of the top of your spinner. Okay, so you've got your stalk on top there, sitting upright. And then with the hanging cord, what I would do, what I've done on mine, is obviously use my needle, and then I've gone from the bottom underneath the stalk, and I've thread the yarn all the way up through the stem so it comes out of the center. So then when the wind spinner's hanging, the stalk stays centrally positioned as well and upright. It helps keep it upright rather than it flopping over. So yeah, that's really super easy to do. And then underneath, obviously, you'll have the tail of your green and the tail of your stalk colour. So just tie those in a double knot and snip the ends short, and then weave those back in to finish off. For the hanging loop, as I've said previously on my other spinners, now I would suggest hanging with a single cord where possible, because the spinners spin much quicker, much better, much faster, and much more continuously if you use a single cord. So all I have done with my one is go up to the top, and I've just created a slip knot in the top there, just so then the loop itself is adjustable. So if you want to change where you've hung it up, then that makes it a lot easier, because obviously you can just then adjust the size of your loop to suit. Okay, so that's how that's done. With the pumpkin stalk, it's basically the same thing. You would obviously thread your yarn through your needle, and then I would just slip stitch in there, just catch in, just whip stitch around and catch your top orange loops where possible. And then when you've finished attaching, when you're happy with the positioning and the tightness and you finish attaching it, I would thread your needle back down through the center, out through the bottom of your pumpkin, and then secure all of your yarn tails together and tie them all together in a knot. Try and keep it as close to, sort of push your pumpkin out while you're doing so that the stalk knot is well hidden, and then it will, once you let it go back to its shape, it will recede back into the pumpkin there, so that yarn tail will be hidden. And then just trim the others off and weave all those in as you normally would. So there you go, that is how you make the little pumpkin wind spinner. Thank you again for watching as always. If you'd like to waterproof your spinners, there's a video on my channel about how to do that nice and easily. And if you haven't already and you would like to, please feel free to subscribe to my channel and pop a like on the video. This really helps us out because obviously we are providing free tutorials for you, so it's really helpful. It helps keep our videos nice and up high for everyone else to share too. So thank you again guys, and I will see you next time, and until then, happy crocheting.